David Shapiro is a proven business leader with over 20 years of broad-based experience driving cash flow and enterprise value creation for publicly traded and privately held media, internet, and technology companies. He is currently the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at Thrasio, which is a consumer goods company reimagining omni-channel commerce and consumer products. With the experience of evaluating more than 6,000 Amazon companies, acquiring over 200 top-rated brands, and managing the scale of tens of thousands of products, Thrasio is the largest acquirer of Amazon FBA businesses, and also is coming off tremendous news of a significant funding in the markets. So without further ado, I will hand over to Blake and to David. Welcome.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Blake, and thanks to Flippa for hosting this event because it's really fantastic. I'm gonna share my screen real quickly. So as Blake mentioned, I'm David Shapiro. I live in Los Angeles and I head up corporate development for Frazio. My brief bio: before Thrasio, I spent about a dozen years in the online advertising space, affiliate marketing, direct response marketing, as well as the e-commerce industry. Before that, I worked in Hollywood for an entertainment business. And prior to that, I worked for a technology SaaS business. Every company I've ever worked at has had a successful exit. I've also worked on a bunch of SPACs, about 7 SPACs. So if anyone wants to talk about SPACs, I'm certainly happy to. And I started my career as an attorney, as a lawyer. So Frazio, for those who don't know, Frazio is the largest acquirer of Amazon businesses. We acquire e-commerce businesses more generally, but we focus on acquiring Amazon businesses, and we acquire and then grow them, obviously. We've had a big week this week. So this slide's actually out of date. I didn't get a chance to update it. 2 days ago on Monday, we announced a $1 billion capital raise. And shortly before that, we announced a $650 million debt raise. Again, if anyone wants to talk about the pros and cons of raising debt versus equity, I'd be very happy to have that conversation. But anyway, so the $2.3 billion figure is actually outdated. The other item that's a little outdated here is that I says that we buy more than one brand per week. We're actually buying about a business and a half per week, about 1.5 businesses a week. So we're acquiring businesses at a very significant scale. And as Blake mentioned, that's resulted in us making lots of millionaires. The actual figure is well over 100 million, is well over 100 millionaires. And we're very proud of this, right? It's just fantastic. The best part of my job and my colleagues' jobs is that we get to talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Sometimes several a day, every day. And that brings a certain perspective, which hopefully I'll share some of it today. And it's just, we're very proud of it. So one of the things I want to talk about today is the culture of Thrasio and how it's enabled us to get where we are, given that the company was only founded 3 years ago. And one of the things we like to do with Thrasio is we like to show TikTok videos, both because they're fun and because they help express a point. So I'm going to share a couple today. And here's my first one. So I was thinking about what to talk about today, and I was watching a football game, American football, and I saw a wave, right? Does everyone know what a wave is? It's when you get everyone in the stadium to, just like in the video, to stand up and it goes around and around in unison. And when it happens, it's pretty fun to be a part of. And I started thinking, a wave is not typically started by a stereotypical leader, right? It's usually started by a drunk guy holding a beer, right? Or in this case, it's started by a child. But what they had is they had a vision, right? They had a vision that said, we're going to get 100,000 people in this stadium to stand up, and we're going to create this beautiful thing. And of course, they can't do it alone, right? They have to enlist all 100,000 people in the stadium to do it with them. So then I was thinking, it's very apropos for every one of you, right? Because each of you is already taking the steps to start your own wave. You've taken the leadership step. You're starting to enlist colleagues and suppliers and customers, and of course, your friends and family, et cetera. And if you're successful, similarly, you're going to create something amazing. So as I start my talk, my wish and my blessing for every one of you is that you shall be successful in starting your own wave. So Frazio, how did Thrasio get started 3 years ago and start its wave? It all started with our CEO, Carlos Cashman, who is a visionary on this topic, well, on many topics, but particularly on the topic of creating the right culture that he wants. And he's been very focused on this from the beginning. And fast forward to today, it's one of the reasons why we've been named, one of the best places to work, and we have high ratings on Glassdoor and greatplacesToWork.com, and low employee attrition, all that stuff. And if you ask my opinion, it all starts from the culture. And I want to share a few of the components of our culture with you today. And my hope is that, well, first of all, I hope you find it interesting as it relates to Frazio, but my real hope is that it'll help you in your own businesses. So first and foremost is we have a no egos, no assholes rule, right? Life is short and nobody wants to work with people with egos. Nobody wants to work with assholes. And it's important because, you have to create a team environment, obviously, and no one wants to work with these people. So first and foremost, that's one of our values. The next item I want to talk about is a concept called letting go of your Legos. And if no one's familiar with this, I suggest you Google it, because it's really an interesting idea. And it's a concept that's been popularized by a woman named Molly Graham. And it basically means that you must give away responsibility if you want to scale, right? So you can't possibly scale if you kind of hoard all the responsibility and if you're overprotective of your roles and responsibilities, right? Because you only have a certain amount of time in the day, and you just can't possibly scale. So what you find is the opposite is true. You have to go out of your way to give away your responsibilities, right? It sounds a little counterintuitive, but you have to give away your responsibilities, give away your Legos, and don't worry about it, because two things are going to happen. One is other people are going to give you their Legos, number one. And number two, as your company starts to grow because you're doing this, there's going to be more opportunity and more Legos are going to be created, all of which is designed to help you scale quickly. The next core value that I want to talk about is blaming up and crediting down. And this is important. You should go out of your way to credit others. It's fun. It's amazing how much this improves the company culture and cohesiveness. And then blame up, right? When something goes wrong, take the blame for it, right? It's hard to do sometimes, but it's so important. Your team will love you for it. The company culture will improve. And it's just something that at least I always try to remind myself, right? And you should always remind yourself to credit everyone whenever you can. And let's talk about data for a second, right? Data talks, bullshit walks, right? Data. Far too many of us, and I'm certainly guilty of this myself at times, make decisions based on our gut. And it makes sense because it's easier, right? It's hard to make data-driven decisions. It's hard to gather the data, to analyze the data, to make a decision. It's easier to make a split-second decision based on your gut. But of course, we know it's not the smart move. So hire a data scientist if you have to. Really go out of your way to make sure you focus on the data. You'll make smarter decisions. And then, of course, don't be afraid to fail. I'm going to show you one more TikTok video right here.
Here's a quote by Michael Jordan that I really like. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again, and that is why I succeed. Learning and growth is impossible without failure. Keep going.
So this concept of failing forward is so important because you want to embrace failure, actually, and then importantly, you need to learn from your failures. But you can't learn from your failures unless you embrace them, unless you acknowledge them, unless you talk openly about them. And of course, as we all know, if you're not failing, almost by definition, you're not taking risks because no one's going to bat 100%, right? So one of the things we do at Thrasio to make everyone feel empowered to take risks and of course to not be afraid of failing is on the very first day, my very first day at Thrasio, I was in a cohort of about 30 people that started that day. And everyone went around the room and we each had to talk about our most spectacular business failure, right? And it was funny and everyone laughed. And then we voted on a winner. And then the most spectacular fail among our group at the next company all hands meeting in front of the entire company shared their fail. But it sent an important message because it shows people that we could talk about it, we could even laugh about it, and then we could learn from it, very importantly.
Here's a quote by my.
And then the last one, of course, is just to have fun, right? When you think about what a corporation is, right? Every one of you has or many of you have started a corporation, but a corporation's, it's really a legal fiction, right? You sign a piece of paper and all of a sudden you have a corporation, right? And a corporation by law operates as just like a person, right? A corporation could own real estate. A corporation could get sued. But a corporation is really, like I said, just a legal fiction. It doesn't really exist. What exists is the people, right? And the culture that makes up that organization. And it's not just the employees, it's your customers and your consultants and your service providers, your family members, et cetera. And make sure that you surround yourselves with people that you have fun with, you'll enjoy it, you'll do better. So these are some of the key core values that I think we live by in Thrasio. But I want to share one other from a company that I worked at a long time ago, very early in my career. It's a company called LRN, which is a SaaS business. And we had a core value that was called be truthful about your present condition. And what this meant is that you should take an honest look in the mirror and recognize your strengths and your weaknesses, right? None of us are great at everything. None of us are terrible at everything. So take a real honest look in the mirror and talk about what you're good at. You know, it reminds me of my kid's school when the head of school says to the parents, like at a parent gathering, who thinks their child is above average, right? Every single parent raises their hand because everyone thinks their child is above average. But of course, we know that's not true, right? Statistically, only half the people are above average and half the people are below average. So in my case, what I tried to do is I tried to differentiate myself when I was in college by working hard, right? I played a game with myself where I stayed in the library every night till the last person left, and then I would stay for another 30 minutes after the last person left. And I did that for really my entire college experience. So the point is recognize your strengths and recognize your weaknesses, and then hire people who complement your strengths and who make up for your weaknesses. And don't just hire anybody, right? Hire smart people. You're gonna have to pay up to hire the smart people, but it's very, very, very worth it. A side benefit, incidentally, of hiring smart people is who are smart people friends with, right? They tend to be friends with other smart people, and they tend to refer other smart people to work at your. And then before you know it, you're going to be surrounded by smarter people. Another aspect of being truthful about your present condition is don't shy away from the tough questions, right? In my experience, when you're trying to raise money or if you're trying to sell your business, a lot of potential investors start out uninformed. And this is not a criticism, they just don't know about your business, right? But what happens, everybody gets smart eventually as they get to learn your business. And because of this, you don't want to sugarcoat your problems. You don't want to sugarcoat any issues or avoid any issues up front. Instead, you should be transparent. And great example of this is I was recently talking to a company that we're looking to acquire, and they gave me a document, an FAQ document with every possible question they could think of. And in that, they highlighted every possible risk to the business. And they didn't have an answer, right, to how to address every risk. And that's just real life, right? No business has an answer to every risk. But I was so impressed with this document because it was so thorough and it was so detailed. And it was just really, really impressive. Earlier in my career, I used to do something not as good as that, but what I used to do when I prepare for board meetings, right? When you're preparing for a board meeting, you want to anticipate questions the board's going to ask, and you want to incorporate the relevant materials in your presentation. But you're never going to be able to incorporate everything because there's just not enough time. So what I used to do is I used to think of 10 questions I thought the board might ask, and I would print out 10, I would create 10 folders, and in each folder I'd print out that question and the answers to that question. And then I'd spread it out on the table in front of me at the board meeting. And then what would happen was invariably 2 or 3 or 4 of the questions would get answered at the board meeting, and I'd pull out that folder and I'd pass the answers around. And the board, was always obviously very happy that I had thought of it, and we were really organized. And then an incidental benefit of that, it became a running joke at the end of the meeting when there were, say, 6 folders that I didn't touch because those questions weren't asked. The board would want to know what questions, should they have asked that they didn't, right? And it just became like a fun thing with them. The last point on being truthful about your present condition is when you're asking yourself tough questions, sometimes you need to be prepared to pivot your business. So 4 years ago, when I was at a different company, I purchased an ad tech business that was essentially pre-revenue. And I purchased it because I was so impressed with a young 26-year-old CEO. And we paid him and his co-founder $5 million for his business, right? Made them both millionaires. By the way, as an aside, it reminds me of the old adage that it's better to buy a business with an A CEO and a B business than an A business with a B CEO. And this CEO was fantastic. And within a year, what we did is we saw an opportunity from a subset of our customers, which were health advertisers. And we pivoted the entire business to focus on health advertisers exclusively. And now 4 years later, 4.5 years later, that business is the leading healthcare digital marketing business in the United States. So be truthful about your present condition, be transparent, and be prepared to pivot. So this concept of the paradox of happiness is one of my favorite topics, both in life and in business. The paradox of happiness refers to the fact that if you chase happiness directly for the sake of being happy, you might find that it's elusive and that you are never happy, actually. But instead, if you focus on things you enjoy, say in my case, I like hiking or I like traveling, right? If you focus on things you enjoy, you're going to wake up one day and realize that you're happy, right? And you're just going to be happy. So the same is true for money, and we'll call it the paradox of money. If you're starting your business to get rich and you're focused solely and exclusively and directly on trying to get rich, you might find that money becomes elusive, right? But instead, if you focus on meeting a customer need, and especially meeting a customer need in an area that you're passionate about, you're likely going to wake up one day and find that you have money, right? And it makes sense because if you like what you're doing, if you're meeting a customer need, you're more likely to be successful. And if you're more likely to be successful, you're more likely to make money. Jeff Bezos clearly focuses on this, and I'm going to show you my last TikTok video when he talks about this exact point.
But the number one thing that has made us successful by far is obsessive compulsive focus on the customer as opposed to obsession over the competitor.
So that's the last TikTok video I'm going to share today. But the point is that Jeff Bezos did not focus on getting rich, right? He's focused on meeting a customer need, on solving customer issues. And then, of course, lo and behold, he wakes up one day and he finds out that he's very wealthy. So the last topic I want to touch on briefly is some practical tips for raising money or exiting your business. I was listening to the last conversation, and I know there was even some comments about people who are looking to raise capital. So look, obviously you have to focus on business performance, and you have to make sure there's profit margins are X, you're profitable, you're growing addressable market, etc. But I purposely chose not to focus on those areas. First of all, I think you probably all know them, but to me, they're not nearly as important as focusing on culture and leadership and some of the topics I was addressing just a few minutes ago. I'm always most impressed when I meet with a company when they start out talking about these topics, right? So my advice is, if you're talking to an investor or something like that, start with this. Start talking about the culture you're creating. Start talking about your people. And then, of course, you're going to get to your business performance. And then if you do, I think you're going to find it goes very well. The last thing I want to share with you is some practical tips for actually raising money. So a friend of mine named Bo Peabody from Greycroft. Greycroft is a very successful venture capital firm. And he prepared this document called 16 Super Secret Steps to Securing a Term Sheet and Raising Capital. Now, to be fair, by the way, you don't have to write this down. Blake or anyone at Flipper could give this to you. So if you want it, just email them and they'll send you a copy of this. But this is really not meant for people raising seed capital, which are typically going to friends and family. This is really referring to if you're going to venture capital firms. But I think the steps are really valuable and important because, if you don't know it, if you've never done it, you just don't know it, right? But once you read it, you'll see there's nothing in here that's rocket science. But again, if you don't know it, you don't know it. So I hope you find this valuable. And again, happy to send a copy to anybody who wants. So go out, create your own wave. I certainly don't pretend to know all the answers. I don't think there is a single answer. Every entrepreneur has your own story and a path to success. And again, my blessing to you is that you should embrace yours and start your own wave. Thank you very much. Blake, if we have time, I'd be thrilled to take some questions if we have time.
Yeah, we certainly have time, David. Awesome session. Thank you so much. My first question, though, is, and I know you didn't speak about it, I promise you we'll get to the culture stuff. And that's the most important thing when growing a successful company. I completely agree and subscribe to that. But I do want to know, what does it take to raise $1 billion round?
So it's a good question. So we raised around also from really some of the top investors on the planet, right? Silver Lake and Advent particularly. And they're very smart, obviously, and you have to have the numbers to support it. But just like I was talking about, and I can't speak for them, obviously, but I think the cultural aspects are so important for two reasons. One is, well, they're just important, right? But two is they inform a lot of the financial success. If you want to know why the company has had the success it has, you have to understand these cultural aspects.
Yep. And so when they're talking about the cultural aspects with you guys, are you doing what you just did? Are you literally talking about, the spokes of the wheel, the key fundamentals around how you've built the culture, or the approach to learning, failure, experimentation? Is that what you're going through?
Yeah, so we definitely put a lot of resources into education. So resources internally for every topic you could imagine. We have lunch and learns constantly. Everyone's sharing information back and forth. One of the things we do, which I think is different from, certainly different from companies I've been at before, is every group, every department leader has a chief of staff, right? So I have a chief of staff, our head of marketing has a chief of staff, our head of supply chain has a chief of staff. And one of their primary responsibilities is communication and cross communication. So they're constantly sharing updates with each other. And then each chief of staff will disseminate that through his or her organization. And it really, really helps with the flow of communication. And we're obviously a bigger company already at this point. We've hired, 1,000 people this year, whatever it's been. And it's just, as you grow, it's so important to have those lines of communication open.
Yeah, I think just as important in a small business, actually. I mean, as soon as you've got sort of 5 or 6 employees, there starts to be a breakdown of communication somewhere, and those easy flows of communication are super important in keeping people focused and delivering the right stuff. There is a question here. I know it's a really simple one for you, but I also know that you do have some interest of some sort. I hope you don't mind me saying so, in affiliate businesses. And Chris from the crew asks, does Thrasio focus on buying Amazon Associate or FBAs? Now, there's the obvious answer, but maybe there's something a bit longer.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'm certainly happy to talk about affiliate marketing. And I have a background in it. Like I said before, I joined Frazio. I was in the affiliate marketing for a long time. Totally as an aside, I was actually on Shark Tank for an affiliate marketing product that I created with my wife and 2 friends. So and we got an offer from Mark Cuban, and it was an affiliate market. It was an affiliate marketing app essentially. It was cool. It's called Foot Fairy if anybody wants to watch the episode.
That is the best.
But so yeah, so we'll look. Obviously, our bread and butter is buying FBA businesses or e-commerce businesses. But affiliate marketing is critical. If you look at businesses like the New York Times, right? They're putting a lot of effort into their affiliate marketing programs. They have Wirecutter as an example. Lots of publications are, finding that they can't rely on traditional advertising solely, so they're supplementing that with affiliate marketing efforts, and it's a great distribution channel.
Yep, sure is a wonderful distribution channel, and we often talk about the value of e-commerce businesses buying other affiliate sites and using the eyeballs from those sites to attract more customers and new customers to their own e-com businesses. So lots of adaptations of, I guess, a growth strategy, and certainly affiliate sites are one part of that. Another question here, does Thrasio buy portfolios of businesses? Or is it always single brand? How does that structure of acquisition tend to play out?
So we would certainly look at all of the above, and we've done all of the above, right? We certainly have bought and would buy businesses with multiple brands. Yeah, that's
okay.
Sure.
Got it. I've got a, hopefully it's not confidential, David. Let me know if I'm stepping on toes, but what percentage of the business owners that you have acquired have stayed on with Thrasio?
So it's not a confidential question, and it largely depends on the founder. Typically, they do not join the business.
Yep.
They do not join us, and very often they'll go start another business, and we'll hopefully buy the next business as well, right? So I think there's a lot of flexibility in that regard.
Okay. Questions coming in thick and fast, so I'm just going to use these. What are the challenges of operating, I guess, such a large sum of FBA businesses? Clearly, you're looking for economies of scale across the board, be it the logistical operations, be it the access to the product. But just generally speaking, what are some of the challenges that Thrasio has faced in operating so many brands and so many businesses at scale so quickly?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'd say there's challenges and there's opportunities, right? On the challenge side, it's exactly that. We're buying, like I said, a business and a half a week, every week, right? And you have to incorporate them. Now we have a very tried and true system already. You're right, of incorporating brands and then optimizing them. So one of the opportunities, which I think is pretty obvious, but it's worth mentioning, is if you have a business, I see a comment here, somebody with a business, let's say $3 million of EBITDA, fantastic business, right? Phenomenal business. But there's no way at a business that size you could be an expert in everything, right? You can't be an expert in data analytics and in SEO and in optimizing your supply chain, right? It's just impossible, right? But with scale, you could really provide expertise in all those areas and optimize the businesses. So I would focus both, like you said, Blake, on the challenges, but also the opportunities from bringing in lots of these businesses.
Yeah, wonderful. David, thank you. Your insights have been outstanding. I don't think we talk about culture enough. It's almost taken for granted, and clearly the single most important factor in keeping a team together. And if you've got great talent, then that should probably be your number one priority. So thank you so much for the insight there. Congratulations on the big raise. All the best with growing the business even further above and beyond. And once again, thanks for joining today.
Thank you very much.